Do we have folks online? Okay. Just give you a minute to get those folks going, and then we'll get started.
Oh, sure. A whole lifetime of stuff. We all do. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, we'll get started. It's a little afternoon, and I know that we have folks online, and it being a new midday meeting, we wanted to offer that opportunity to families. You know, the folks have things that they may need to get to, so we'll get started. Let me introduce myself. My name is Paul Passera. I'm the superintendent here at Lewiston-Porter Central Schools. And I'm pleased to offer these meeting opportunities for families to have an opportunity to talk and ask questions regarding our reopening plan. These have obviously been very difficult times for all of us, dating back to March 15th, when we were forced to shut down the schools due to the pandemic as it was developing. I don't think any of us ever anticipated that we would be put in a position where not only would schools have not reopened end of last year, but now we're in a position where, due to the pandemic, due to the coronavirus, we are now in a position that we have to continue to maintain those very rigid standards that have been established here in New York State in order to allow schools to reopen in some fashion, yet still maintain those very critical guidance of social distancing and mask wearing. So this has been a team effort from the get-go, and really I would not have been able to have us in the position that we are at were it not for a really wonderful team that's been assembled and a great board of education. It's been extremely supportive. So I did want to just introduce, we've got some of the team here, and you're going to be hearing from some of them as we move through our presentation before we get to questions. So on my right, Dr. Heather Lyons, she's the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction and Technology. Dr. Barbara Gottschall, the Director of Special Education. Down in front, manning the technology is Mr. Nick Hill, Director of Technology. Next to Nick is one of our board members, Mrs. Charlotte Hubschman. Next to Charlotte, board member Mrs. Jennifer Clemick. Next to Jennifer, our board vice president, Ms. Danielle Mullen. Next to Danielle is actually two of our key players are down in the end, and, particularly when it comes to the health and the medical health of our school district and each building on a daily basis, and that would be our school nurses. They will be providing a conduit between families and the Marion County Health Department, between families and our school physician, between families and their local physician, and particularly when symptoms start to develop here. And that's Maureen Koroshetz is the nurse here at the high school, and Sue Lombardi is the nurse at the middle school. They've been outstanding, been very much part of our planning since we first met as an administrative team when the guidance first came out, so we're very pleased about that. Two key players in terms of the day-to-day operation, particularly for those who are coming back in the hybrid experience, the in-person experience, are our building principals. In that, on the end, we have Mr. Brad Rolls, the high school principal, and Mr. Amy Auer, our middle school principal. I do want you to recognize, however, and they recognize very much that regardless of whether a child is in the hybrid, in person, so they're here, they're a green or a white, and they're here 2 days a week, and then that remote Monday, if they're 100% learner, they are still part of the school. They are still enrolled in the school. They are still taking classes that are functioning through the school, understanding that they are taking on an online platform. For secondary, it's called Apex, but they're still, those classes are still scheduled through the school. They're, again, it's self-directed learning with a teacher liaison, and we'll get more into that and certainly ask questions about it, but that teacher liaison that will be dedicated to a group of students within that remote will be meeting with the children who are remote every day. Not certified in all of the subjects that they're taking online, but we will then have opportunity if questions arise in a particular subject matter to get that to the right people. But they are part of the school, and they will be included in all school communications, because there could be an opportunity for them. We have to go 100% remote, depending on where this pandemic goes this fall, and then there may be an opportunity for them after 10 weeks to rejoin us, and we want to make sure that that transition goes well. So I'm here just to give a general overview, then turn it over to a few folks before we get to your questions. I do want parents to understand that we have made this and are continuing to make this a team effort, collaborative effort between our stakeholders across our community. The survey that parents took was critical for us in terms of decision making. Most importantly, 70% of families were suggested to us through the survey that they were interested in some form of in-person school. They wanted their children here on campus in some fashion. About 30% of families said that no, they were not, they were concerned about that. So when I say 30%, that means they disagreed or strongly disagreed with the idea of coming back to school, which is interesting because 30% of our school population represents about 600 families, 600 students. And currently right now we have about 250 students that are not coming back. And that's only about 15%, less than 15%. So perhaps families are comfortable with the model being created in the hybrid. Perhaps families are still making that decision. I cannot stress enough. I know we have 2 meetings next week, but I cannot stress enough how important it is for families to make the decision as to what they're going to do, because it will help us in the scheduling process. You saw in my most recent email that I really am encouraging families to make that decision by tomorrow, 3 o'clock, so that we can begin the scheduling process. And that's not just if your child is coming back or not in the remote model, but also that transportation piece. We just learned this morning that a fair number of our bus drivers are opting out of this, and that's going to be problematic for us. Obviously, we just learned that this morning. We're working with the bus company to get folks on those runs, and obviously it's we contract with a private company. We don't have our own bus service, so to a certain extent that helps us because that company is a huge national company. They have the wherewithal to do the advertising and things like that. So in that regard, I'm hopeful that we'll have enough drivers to make this all happen. But we do have a fair number of families that have opted out of the transportation, and that's going to be helpful for us in terms of developing bus routes. You can see some of the other players. We've been also. I work very closely with the other superintendents in Orleans and Niagara County, and as you can see, by and large, all of the schools are having some form of hybrid type approach to learning for this fall. Why did we choose this? You know, from our early emails, when the first round of guidance came out from the Department of Health, it talked about social distancing or mask wearing, so that you didn't need to do the social distancing, you could get everybody in a mask. And that had been my original thought, that we could try to have more kids on campus on a daily basis if we could have everybody in a mask. Would have been difficult, for sure. Obviously, we've seen the pictures of the schools in the South. I'm not sure how aggressive they were on the mask wearing, but clearly they shoulder to shoulder, and there were many students without masks. Clearly, as the guidance started to grow, that changed rapidly. July 22nd, the new guidance came out that we must start with the premise that we're going to socially distance in every aspect that we can, by most importantly through instruction. So in order for us to do that, because of the over 2,000 students that we have on campus, and for us to socially distance, given the class sizes that we have, given the age of our buildings and the space within classes. This is a building built in 1970. The rest of the buildings were built in the 1950s. The requirement for classroom sizes was not where it is at now. If you, obviously some of you may have graduated from Lewiston-Porter, you know it's a hodgepodge of class sizes. Some are extremely small, some are more large, but it's difficult. So we had to really look at social distancing very carefully. We have boiled it down to about 11 or 12 kids that we can socially distance in most of our classrooms. Some we can add 1 or 2 more, some might be 1 or 2 less, but in general it's about 11 or 12 kids per classroom, and that's the premise that we're working on. So with that, you then have the and, masks must be worn at all times. There was a thought that we could, once we had the students socially distanced in the classrooms during instruction, they could take their masks off, but that is just not going to be the case. Working very closely with our teachers union, our Lewiston-Porter United teachers, and the other bargaining units, there is significant concern for staff's safety. And I also have received a number of emails from parents concerned that we're not promoting mask wearing at all times. So we have made that decision. Students must wear a mask at all times. They're obviously not during lunch, when they're in PE, if they're 12 feet apart, they can take their mask off. And we will be offering opportunities for some mask breaks, particularly at the elementary level. But families need to recognize that and make that part of their decision making, that we will be expecting mask wearing at all times, except during those very structured mask break times, and during lunch and PE when it can be socially distanced, 12 feet of space between students. So I want to make that very clear to families going into this process. Health, safety, facilities, nutrition, and transportation are just critical to making this all work. And Dr. Patricia Rucka is our Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services. She's been working very closely with our CSEA group, our custodial workers. Been working very closely with Personal Touch, our child nutrition service, and STAs, Student Transportation of America, on our busing. So I'm going to have her speak a little bit to where we're at with all aspects of that work. Dr. Garland.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everyone for attending today. We're going to talk about some very important things here in regards to your children's health and safety. So first of all, I want you to know that one of the things we looked at and started purchasing very early on are mass quantities of PPE. When your child arrives here at school, if they're an attender, they'll receive a packet of 5 reusable masks. We ask that they wear one a day and that you launder them at the end of the week when they come back. We also are encouraging anyone who wants their child to wear their own face covering. They can bring something in personalized, as long as it's appropriate. You know, we want kids to be comfortable. The masks that we purchase are cotton or soft. They're easy to wear, easy to use. But if there's another face covering that your child would like to wear, we absolutely support that as well. We have goggles, we have face shields, we have some expression masks for our teachers, and we will share some with our students if they need to have them for those who are who have hearing impaired or who have speech issues for those classes. We've bought lots for our nurses, gowns and gloves, all kinds of different PPE to facilitate safety here in the district. Social distancing, we've restructured our classrooms so that almost every classroom, the desks are 6 feet apart. We've taken out furniture to do this. We've done a lot of measuring. We've restructured our cafeteria spaces. And if you can see, when we came into the building, we put tape down in every hallway in every building, so every hallway will be one directional in each direction. In addition, outside of the bathrooms, there'll be demarcations at 6 feet so that there's going to be some monitoring of how many children are in the laboratories at the same time. You'll see that same thing entering the building. When you came in today, you had your temperature checked and you took a questionnaire. We ask that you do both of those things. Take the questionnaire with your child and take their temperature every day before they leave in the morning. We are going to be pushing that questionnaire out weekly so that, as a reminder, to make sure you're doing that with your children. In addition, we will be temperature checking every child as they come into the building. We will not be doing it with a handheld. We actually bought thermographic cameras that can do multiple students at a time. What they look like, it does not look like, you won't see hot spots. It looks like a picture like you would see me standing here now, but with a little temperature over my head. Should your child have a temperature of 100 or higher, they will be walked down to the nurse's office. Our nurses will then do an assessment of their health. We'll take a second temperature to make sure that it was an accurate reading. We'll talk to your child a little bit, and then you will receive a phone call if they need to be sent home. We are not testing here. We are not equipped to do it, and quite frankly, that is not our role. So we will recommend to you to see your doctor, and then your doctor will make a recommendation if your child needs to be tested. Hand and respiratory hygiene training is going to occur throughout the district, both with adults and children, as well as how to don and doff a mask, so how to put it on the right way and how to take it off the right way. In addition, we will be training all of our staff on the signs of COVID, the signs and symptoms, and how to recognize it and what to do. If someone is ill, you'll see that there's a flow chart that you received. If someone is ill, we will follow that flow chart. So if we think someone is ill and they are sent home, you will have to be out for a certain number of days or be sent home with a doctor's note or be tested. There's 2 different ways of finding out whether or not you can come back. If you have a child that has an illness that replicates some of those symptoms, and there are some illnesses that do so, for example, if your child has asthma or severe allergies, you'll want to send in a note from your doctor at the beginning of the year to help our nurses out so they can identify if that's really just a common symptom. For secondary, your children will probably know as well. So it is important that you communicate closely with the nurses if your child has a pre-existing condition. Our facilities, like Mr. Casari said, we've been working closely with our cleaning staff on really differentiating the difference between cleaning and sanitization. Many districts are talking about a deep cleaning process that they're engaging in. We really like to think of it differently. We're cleaning every day, but we are sanitizing multiple times throughout the day. So we're working with a company called Hilliard. They work out job cards for all of our cleaning staff, so every staff member will have a job card on the card. We're going to be doing a second training with them actually the 27th, where they will see what high-touch areas need to be cleaned multiple times throughout the day, what areas need less cleaning. So, for example, we used to auto scrub the floors quite regularly. We may not need to auto scrub the floors in high school as often as we need to sanitize high-touch spots, like anything in a bathroom, sinks, drinking fountains, all the areas where children will have multiple access points during the day. You saw our traffic flow on the floor here. The entire building will look like that, as will all of our other buildings. We'll be at 50% occupancy and actually probably less than 50% when we take up remote learners. So you'll see a lot less traffic in the halls. It will be one directional. They're going to allocate lockers so children don't have lockers next to each other on opposite days. And there'll be a lot less exposure in that way. We talked about a little bit about restructuring the rooms in the cafeterias. The cafeterias will be the only area, probably the only area in the school where children will be allowed to take their masks off for their mask break outside the gym. Gym will mostly be outside. We've removed all of the tables from the lunchrooms, and the students will be sitting at desks facing in one direction. Our outdoor areas, We will be sanitizing all of the high-touch spots in all of our outdoor areas. He is going to look a little different for the beginning of the year. Mr. Cassari talked about being 12 feet apart. So there are some sports and some athletic activities that they will not be able to participate, at least not during this time of year. Our water fountains, I don't know if you've noticed, but they are turned off. We will have bottle filler stations, at least 1 per 100 students in every building. We encourage you to bring bottled water, or if your child wants to bring something that they can drink, a drink bottle or a glass that they can drink out of that's reusable, that would be helpful. Child nutrition, we're going to be feeding our kids breakfast and lunch as we always have. If you are an attender and you're here on you're on white day, you'll get your lunch and breakfast here as you normally would. You'll wait in line with your mask on. You will pick up a pre-packaged lunch or breakfast. There will be options, but they will all be pre-packaged. I know if you picked your lunch up there over the summer, came in brown paper bags. Some will be in brown paper bags. Some hot lunches will be in a clamshell container. If you are a white student on a green day or on a Monday, you will pick your lunch up here at the high school, lunch and breakfast here up here at the high school, as you would normally receive a lunch. And same for opposite days. So lunches and breakfast still available 5 days a week. They're in your cafeteria for on-campus students, and for the students who are on remote days, they will be here at the high school. And you'll receive more information as we get closer to opening. Lunch will be the one time when you can take your mask off. So that's fantastic. While you're sitting at your desk eating your lunch, your mask comes off. When you get up from your desk, the mask has to go back on. Same thing for transportation. When your child is at the bus stop, we ask that you have your child in a mask. There is only one child per seat unless the children are from the same family members. So we, with about half of our population, once we take out the children who are driving or parents who are driving them, we're at about approximately 22 students per bus. So that allows us to do 1 child per bus or per seat. We are going to disinfect between runs. That means between every run, between morning runs, between afternoon runs. So your children will be sitting in seats that have been cleaned. BOCES presented us a little bit of a different problem because our BOCES kids are going 5 days. On Mondays, no matter whether you're mornings or afternoon, you pick up at home, you drop off at home. On Tuesday and Wednesday, if you're in school, you'll be picked up at home. You'll be picked up at home in the afternoon if you're not here. If you're an afternoon, well, let's start with the mornings. If you're a morning student and you're here, you're going to be picked up here. If it's your off day, you're going to be picked up at home and dropped off at home. If it's your day to be here, you'll be dropped off here in the morning. If you're an afternoon student, you'll be picked up here and then dropped off at home. So there is transportation in both directions. We are going to allow a substantial number of students to drive themselves this year. So BOCES has allotted us a certain number of spots for drivers, both in the AM and PM. So approximately 25 students will be allowed to drive. If they're siblings, they can drive together. If not, we're not ready to take that chance yet with our kiddos, but there will be 25 spots in mornings and afternoon. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Ryan to talk about.
Let me just follow up before I turn it over. Thank you, though. Very informative, and I appreciate all the hard work that Dr. Brepka, Mr. Paul Feathers, our Director of Facilities, Mr. Rich Salverson, our Assistant Director, are all doing to ensure the cleanliness and the sanitization. One thing that Dr. Brepka didn't touch on was heating and ventilation. And I did want to recognize that significant amount of work has been gone into cleaning all of our systems. We had a company called UNS. They are kind of a company that offers us evaluation of our HVAC systems in all of our buildings. Here at the high school and PEC, there are new HVAC systems, and of course, the middle school and the intermediate school, there are older systems. All of the systems have been checked thoroughly, cleaned thoroughly. There was some conversation early on about the need for HEPA filters. HEPA HEPA filter is just a specific kind of filtration system. It really boils down to what's called the MERV rating, MERV rating, and the number of particulates that can be filtered. A HEPA filter has filters to about 0.3 micrometers. And is it 0.3 or 0.03? 0.3 micrometers. And the MERV filters have a rating of between 13 and 16. So on our systems, because we could not fit HEPA filters, we were looking for the highest rating of MERV so that they would filter the same amount of particulate but still offer the quality airflow, because airflow is just as important as the ability to filtrate particulates. So all of our systems are fitted with filters with MERV ratings between 13 and 16. So we are still at that low micrometer particulate filtration that is offered by HEPA, but the filters that are on our systems fit our systems, and they offer significantly more airflow from the outside. So if you ever walk around our buildings, you notice that in front of most of the rooms, you'll see a cutout, and it looks like a screen there. That's the filtration for the univents that are in all the rooms. And that all of those have been taken off, they've been cleaned, so that there's quality airflow happening, and they've all been refitted with these new filters for our system that filter particulates up to 0.3 micrometers. So we feel like we've done our due diligence, and we have really, in terms of our system, the catalog of filters on them, and I feel like we are ready to go. Obviously, at the middle school and the PEC, or the IEC, they do not have air conditioning, so windows will need to be opened. A number of families have been concerned about the level of heat and the wearing of masks. We're just going to have to take that on a daily basis, and I'll have to make decisions regarding if we do get excessive heat. We may need to take a look at that moving into the fall. But we'll hopefully keep our fingers crossed we're not confronted with that issue. Yes, obviously, the biggest decision the families are making right now is to decide whether to keep their child home and have them learning 100% online with a learning platform called Apex in a self-directed manner, or whether they will have their children come to school and based on their last name, 2 days a week. If they're in the green group, on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. If they're in the white group, on Thursdays and Fridays. And then on Mondays, all students will be working with teachers 100% remotely. And students on Mondays at grades 6 through 12, a little different at the elementary levels, but grades 6 through 12 will be following their schedule online. The classes are a little shorter, so the day will end about 1 o'clock rather than 2:30. Again, trying to keep students online for a 40-minute class is difficult, so we cut those classes back to about 25 to 30 minutes. But basically, a child will have to get up, brush their teeth, and if they have a first period class, get logged on by 7:45. They'll follow their schedule online on Mondays. They have a study hall, they have a break. If they have their lunch, they have a break at home, and their day will end. The day will not end for teachers, I can assure you of that. There will be a need for teachers to schedule office hours, reach out to individual students, plan with their colleagues on the process. But those days, on Mondays, the remote days will be students grades 6 through 12 will be following their schedule. There's much detail. The other piece that I wanted to just say is that we know that we have a significant number of special education students. For our self-contained students, They are given the option. Those are students in 611, 1211, or 1511. Those students have the option of coming all 4 of the in-person days. And that is really driven by state guidance. Our most needy learners need to have their needs met, and that really is best done through the in-person experience. We know that that's not working for some families, so we're making those accommodations. The bottom line is that we recognize that all children, over 300 students here at Lewiston-Porter, have an IEP, an individual education plan. That IEP is written in law under the Individuals with Disability Education Act, IDEA, and then, of course, state education law. As a district, we are compelled by law to follow the IEP as it is written. Our intent is,
I was using this, but they're saying that's IPs.
all right. Our intent and our focus is to make sure that IEPs are followed to the letter of the law. And that is the overarching direction that I am giving to our Director of Special Education, our peer coordinators, and our classroom teachers. So our teachers are working diligently to prepare that. And I should mention that this is a collaboration with teachers. Teachers are an incredibly important group in this whole process. Mr. Brett Coppins, president of the Lewiston-Porter United Teachers, is here right now. He's been and they have been at all of our meetings, and I can't thank them enough. Mr. Coppins, the president of the union, and Mrs. Jarzewski, the vice president of the union, they have just been outstanding to work with, and I could not do this without them. And so they are also recognizing the subtle nuances that continue to develop in terms of teacher responsibility, both for 100% remote learners and those students in person. We are working through those, but our goal and our focus is to make sure that we are meeting the needs of all of our learners, especially those students with individual education plans. So that's where we will continue. I've gone into a fair amount of detail here, but there's still a little bit more, and there's some documents that I want you to understand. So I'm going to ask Dr. Heather Lyon, the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction and Technologies, just to delve a little bit deeper into our teaching and learning plan. Dr. Lyon.
Good afternoon. Like you, I'm a parent too. In fact, I have a freshman this year. So I have an elementary child, a middle school child, and a high schooler this year for the one and only time. So I'm saying that because I want you to know that the experience that you experienced in the spring is similar to I think of it similarly to the experience that I had with my firstborn child, in that I gave him the very best. Like, I loved the heck out of that kid. And yet, when it came time to parent his sister, who came 2 years later, I was more experienced and prepared. It's not that I didn't, that I loved my second child more, or that I didn't love my first child when I had him, but as I knew better, I got better. This plan is similar in that what we did in the spring was like our first child. We gave it our best shot, but we know better, and we're going to try to do better in the fall. So I just want to put that out there, because I know that some families were discouraged by what they saw in the spring, because we really focused on asynchronous instruction, which I'll get to that terminology in just a couple slides. But the plan as we move into the fall is to do better than what we did in the spring. I want to direct your attention to 3 important documents. This first document is the district reopening plan. You don't have a hard copy of that because it's over 60 pages, but all of these documents are available on our website, and I encourage you to look at them. If you are looking specifically for information related to teaching and learning, I'm going to draw your attention to pages 32 through 56 in that plan. And it really starts with social emotional learning, which I'll touch on the next slide, and then goes into things like the scheduling and whatnot. You also likely received in the mail the second document, and if you're in the audience, you also have it in your hands. It's a two-page or a single-sided, double-sided single page that talks about the difference between in-person, hybrid, and remote learning. It talks a little bit about what we're doing with the green groups and the white groups, and so that gives you a lot of valuable information. But if you're joining us in person, you also receive this 8-page document, which, like I said, is on our website. And that goes into even more detail. I want to say, for example, no matter if your child is on campus or off campus, we are aligned to the standards. That's our obligation as a school district, is to ensure that students learn the standards. And so we are committed to that. Also on page 3, it talks about special populations, including our students with disabilities and our English language learners, which I'll talk about momentarily. And then it does a really nice job talking about the learning platforms for our remote students, and then the learning programs that we will be delivering in person. What I want you to know is that if your child is coming to campus, our program is not changing, even though our contact time with your child is going to change. The good news about smaller class sizes is that you can attend to more instruction with a smaller group than you can with a larger group. So even though your children may be on campus less frequently than they would be if this wasn't taking place, we still have the same expectations of learning for ourselves and for your children. And that means, for example, that on campus, if your child is an incoming 6th grader, they'll be participating in the web program where everybody belongs, to ensure that their incoming into 6th grade is comfortable and that they are being thought about and know that it's their new home and they feel like that. And also for our high school students, they're still going to have things like access to great visual and performing arts opportunities, thanks to people like Mr. Coppins. And so I just want to give that reassurance. Now, if you are thinking about not doing on-campus learning in the hybrid model, and you're thinking about the remote instruction, and you're wondering what that's going to look and sound like, that's on page 6 in this document, and it talks about the Apex platform. And so you may have heard of it because other school districts in the past have used it for things like credit recovery, but it's also great for credit accrual. And so there are a wide variety of courses, including AP level courses that are offered for our remote learners. And we are able to coordinate what the learning looks like for our remote learners so that they are on a similar trajectory of the course content exposure as the students who are on campus, because it is possible for our students at the 10-week mark to decide, I want to go into the other model. So if I'm a hybrid student at 10 weeks, I might decide that I want to become remote. If I'm a remote student at 10 weeks, I may decide that I want to become hybrid. We want to make sure that that integration is as seamless as we can make it. I talked a little bit about social emotional learning, and so I want to let you know that regardless of if your child is going to be on campus or off campus, their social emotional health and wellness is of the highest priority to us. So our remote learners will be clustered into small groups. So let's say at the high school we have 50 remote learners. And so we're going to divide those kids into, let's say, 5 different groups. And so there's going to be 10 students in each of those groups. And they will have an assigned time daily when they will be connecting with the other students in that group and a Lewiston-Porter teacher. The title of that teacher is, they're going to be a teacher on special assignment, that we're calling them our remote learning liaisons, and they'll be connecting with those students to say, how's it going? How's your learning going? Because Apex is really an opportunity that has a greater level of flexibility. In other words, our remote learners won't have a schedule. We won't be telling them at home, you need to log in at this time for ELA and this time for math and this time for social studies. They're going to have to figure that out, and they're going to need your support, and we're going to give them support as well. So we're going to be providing them with different strategies, asking them what strategies are working for them. And so those will be daily check-ins. And if you're a remote learner, those times will come when we share with you what your schedule is in terms of your courses that you're taking. Like I said, for students that are on campus, we'll still be providing them with the same support that we always have, both academically and with our social emotional support. So two terms that we're using a lot in 2020 that we may not have used in years are asynchronous and synchronous. And so I want to take a moment just to define those terms, because I know that there can be some confusion. So if you are listening to this presentation and it is August 20th and it is 12:42, you are synchronously participating in this event. I don't care if you're here in the audience or if you're watching at home, we are synchronous. And so if you are watching this as a recording and it is not August 20th at 12:42, then it is asynchronous. And so I have a DVR. There are lots of things that I do not watch live. And so with students, it might be that they're doing an assignment, it might be that they're watching a video in terms of an asynchronous model. But even the students who are coming to campus will have asynchronous opportunities like they've always had, like homework is asynchronous. I want to go back to what Mr. Casari said just a few moments ago about Mondays. Mondays are a synchronous day for our hybrid learners. They will be following a live schedule. They will be having to go to their first period class at the time that first period starts on campus. And so they won't like that. If your kids are anything like my kids, 7:40 is not the time that they necessarily want to get up. But it is what it is. That's part of being in school and choosing that hybrid model. Mr. Casari spoke quite a bit about our students with disabilities. I wanted to mention any students who receive related services, OT, PT, speech, reading perhaps. Those services will be provided, and if you are a remote learner, we're still providing them per your IEP because by law we're required to, so we follow the law. If you are a student with disabilities who has a related service, OT, PT, speech, reading, counseling, on Mondays, our related service providers will be working with families to schedule that time so that it works within that family's schedule. The other thing that I wanted to say is that we are also going to be participating in teletherapy. So it could be that your student might be at home because they're a remote learner, and we're still providing that service. If you're not comfortable coming to campus, which you certainly can make arrangements to come to campus for that therapy if you prefer it. If you do not prefer it or you cannot provide that transportation, then teletherapy will be available. English language learners are a second population of students that has unique needs. As you can imagine, if you were an English language learner, they're going home to settings where English is likely not being spoken in the home, and so we want to ensure, and the state wants us to ensure that there's consistency. So English language learner students are going to be able to come to campus 4 days a week. That's Tuesday through Friday, if that is something that they prefer, other than the 2-day model. Technology. So if you are a remote Lancer, you are still our student. We are still providing you with the technology that you need in order to do that work. And so if you have secondary students, they're going to be receiving Chromebooks. Our Chromebooks are not, we do not provide any kind of covering or padding or anything like that. If that's something you'd like to purchase, you're certainly welcome to do that. But students are responsible, if they are on campus Lancers, to take those devices to and from school, because they're going to need them at home. And so remote Lancers, we have 3 options for you to pick up those devices, starting Wednesday, September 2nd through Friday, September 4th. And so these times are available obviously on this slide, but it's also available on this handout, this one, the Learning Models Explained. It's on the back. And if you are an on-campus Lancer, we will be giving you your device the first week that you're here. So if you're a green group student, you're going to get it on Tuesday or Wednesday. If you are a white group student, you're going to get it on Thursday and Friday. If you're a white group student, you will not need your device on Tuesday or Wednesday. We're really looking at the first week as welcoming students back to campus. Remember, they won't have been here for 6 months. And making sure that they understand new procedures regarding safety and health and how things are working. So the learning that will be required will not necessitate that they have a device, particularly for the white group students on Tuesday and Wednesday. Before I leave this podium, I do want to, Mr. Hill was able to share with us some of the questions that came in beforehand. So I have some of the answers to these questions. So the first question is, how are kids going to receive their work on the 2 days working from home while teachers are going to have the other group in school? And so the answer is that they will have asynchronous assignments. And so during the instruction here, they'll get the learning, and then they'll have assignments that they're going to do on the 2 days that they are not here. Will not be having cameras in the classroom. We will not be asking kids to tune in and turn on their computers, because as you can imagine, being on your computer from 7:40 until 2:30 every day? That would be a really tall order for anyone. Those people who are watching from home right now or wherever they are, I'm going to guess that at some point they have tuned out or there's some distraction at home. And so that's true for all of us. So we didn't want to do that to kids. So they're going to have asynchronous work. And like I said, because the class sizes are going to be smaller for the kids who are on campus, we have every intention of being able to address their learning needs in an expedited way. Attendance will be taken daily, even with the kids who are off campus. So those assignments that they're doing count as their attendance. They need to do the work. After school help, certainly our teachers who are here have the Lancer learning time from 2:40 until 3:10. However, we don't have after school busing. And so what I would recommend is that the students use Google Classroom that has a platform that they can communicate if they have any questions for teachers. Teachers will have office hours on Mondays that students should take advantage of. So when Mr. Casseri said that their learning day for the students was done at around 1 o'clock, that the teachers were still working, they are. They'll be available for office hours by appointment. So if your child has specific questions, they'll be able to get those questions answered. Also, teachers might be reaching out to families to say, hey, I haven't been seeing work. Is everything okay? What can I do to help? It could also be an opportunity for a small group session. In other words, I noticed that these handful of kids are struggling with the same thing. Come join me at 1:15 or whatever the case is. Next question is, how will teachers in the district hold students accountable for their assigned work? I'm sure that question is coming from what we did in the spring, and that we were not grading work in the same way that we traditionally do. We are going back to a traditional grading system and approach for the fall, so kids will be held accountable just as they always have before. I spoke about the structure for the stay-at-home days. If it's a stay-at-home day and it's Tuesday, Wednesday, or it's Thursday, Friday, the child is responsible for being disciplined to do their work on their own schedule in their own time. PE instruction, Mr. Casari spoke about the 12-foot distance. It's not going to be contact sports. It will be more like walking or calisthenics or things of that nature. There will not be changing for PE classes, so no locker room will be needed. So the question here is, we will be choosing remote learning for now. Will my child be able to participate in sports if they're being held? And if we give permission, we are open for our remote learners as well as our on-campus. What will those all look like for remote learners? For clubs that are after school, if parents can provide transportation when clubs start, that's a possibility. Clubs and things like that are not starting until at least the 5-week mark, when we'll be able to reassess how things are going. In terms of ensembles, chorus, band, orchestra, they'll still be practicing, but in smaller groups. So it will be more like a lesson structure rather than a full coming together. I spoke about if a child wants to switch models, that happens at 10 weeks. And I spoke about what will kids who attend virtually be doing on their days off. So those are my answers.
Good.
Thank you so much. Up next is Mr. Casari, who will introduce the principal.
Right, just to follow up on a couple of points. If you are in the 100% remote experience, you are not able to participate in art, music, chorus. Those things are not available for 100% remote learners. They are exceptionally difficult classes to teach, even in the hybrid model with students here on campus in a few days. It is virtually impossible for us to do that in a 100% remote way. On Apex, there are music appreciation classes, there are art appreciation classes. So those courses can be selected by the 100% remote learners. But I want to make it very, very clear that if you're choosing 100% remote, you're keeping your child home. We are offering what I feel is a solid experience. It's certainly New York State certified, so that all the children are advancing towards New York State required credits and graduation credits, but it is not the same as in-person school. I don't know how much more I can explain that to families. It is self-directed learning with a teacher liaison who will check in each day. For example, we have approximately 80 kids here at the high school that are not going to be with us. So we'll probably end up having about 2 teachers. Their full-time job will be to work with those 80 children. So about 40 students per teacher. That teacher, whoever that is, it could be one of our teachers that cannot come to school because of their own health vulnerability, so they're working remotely from home. But they'll take those 40 kids, group them into 5 classes of 8, and those kids will have a schedule, and that teacher will be checking in and Zooming with that group of students, those 8 or 10 students, from 9 to 10, or 10 to 11, or 11 to 12, or 12 to 1, something along those lines. And so that is how we remain and keep the connection between our remote learners and school. But those classes on Apex are significant. So a student may be logging into Global History 9, and they may be actually seeing a video of a teacher, not a Lewiston-Porter teacher, but there's significant work to be done. in those courses. So that teacher liaison is going to help that child and family set up a experience. But if a child is taking 5 or 6 Apex classes each day, you're talking about a full, they need to be online full day, plus they'll have to check in for that check-in with our teacher. So it's going to be significant work that the 100% remote students are going to have to do. And I want families to be prepared for that. If you're choosing 100% remote, you've got to start to gather that thought process. It is self-directed. Families and the child are going to have to come up with a schedule to do all of those assignments, working with that teacher liaison. I wish I could be more clear, because it seems that families are constantly trying to understand that, and I get it. It's difficult, the 100% remoters. It's going to be difficult enough offering our special classes in our hybrid model, in-person learning. And again, a number of families have really had concern about those off days and the fact that it's asynchronous. We will have some of our teachers experimenting with cameras in the classroom, but first of all, it would be no different than at your job to have a camera in your classroom, camera in your office. It's exceptionally difficult for one teacher to manage what's happening online and the 12 to 13 to 14 kids that are in front of them, depending on the size of the class. I can't stress that enough. We still have to cover all the material, we still have to cover the curriculum, we still have to teach to the standards. So if your son or daughter has to turn in an assignment every day, let's say they're a green, on Thursday, they will have to turn in an assignment for every class on Thursday. On Friday, they will have to turn in an assignment for every class on Friday. If they don't turn in that assignment, they're marked as absent. They're marked as absent. That is the attendance. And that is, and of course, they're not just turning in the assignment, but the teacher will be giving them feedback on that assignment. So as Dr. Lyon talked about, it will be asynchronous. They won't be watching the class, but they have to do the work, and they're graded on the work. And they're going to be taking tests, and they're going to be graded as if they've always been graded here at school. Just the work is going to be a little different because some of it's going to be done here in school and some of it's going to be done at home. But there's still a requirement that the work gets done and it gets back to the teacher. Same thing for the 100% remoters, their work will also be graded. They'll be receiving grades, numeric grades using Apex. And I want families to fully understand that. This is not just, I do the class, and if I do the class, it's a pass. No, you've got, and the teacher liaison will be hooked into Apex to see the progress, the grading progress of students. We're also hiring teacher tutors. So if a kid in Apex, say, is taking earth science, and the teacher liaison is checking in with that child and is seeing the grades and recognizing that the student is not doing well in earth science, we will have a cadre of teachers who've said, I will get paid on an hourly basis after school to zoom in or check in with those kids to help them with specific learning needs. So that's how, even though perhaps, let's just say a Spanish teacher, for instance, may be a teacher liaison. Well, how does that Spanish teacher help a kid with earth science? Or how does that Spanish teacher help a student with geometry? They can't, because they don't know the curriculum. But we have these teacher tutors, much like we have our after-school assistance program. Kids can go and get extra help after school from content area teachers. It will work the same way with our remote learners. A teacher will reach out based on communication with the teacher liaison to a child that's having or struggling with some work in Apex, and will offer support in that regard. Apex also offers significant supports within the context of the program itself. And they have their own cadre of teachers that questions can be sent to and asked of and those kinds of things. But if you're choosing 100% remote, if you're keeping your child at home, it is not the same as school as you know it. It just isn't. It's different. It's going to be different. It's going to look different. And it's going to have to be greatly self-directed by your child and your family if it's going to work at home. And I need families to understand that. I don't think families truly understand it or get it yet, but that's how that program works. For those families that are coming onto campus, our principals, Mr. Rolls, and I see Mr. Everett, the assistant principal of the high school, and Mr. Auer, and I see Mr. Ingram, the assistant principal, who's also here with us. They have and are coming up with significant protocols and procedures to move children around this building and all of those pieces. So let me have Mr. Auer and Mr. Rolls step up and just talk a little bit about the protocols that are in place for secondary reopening.
Thanks, Mr. Casari. I want to thank everybody for not only taking the opportunity wherever you are virtually, but also here in the audience today. It really does help us to know that we have the families and the support system behind us as a community. Mr. Rolls and I will be talking a little bit about, like Mr. Casari said, just a little bit of the logistics of getting students to move to and from in a very safe manner as best as we can according to the guidance. A lot of this, as we have here, has already been gone over, so I don't want to reiterate that because I know there's probably a lot of questions that we can answer with follow-up. But just really briefly, student moves as throughout the day in the middle school. As we stated, one-way traffic in the hallways. We're moving as grade levels. They are going to move to the different classes as they normally have, but remember, we're significantly less students. We also have, our building is set up in such a way, because it's one floor, we can move students in different hallways at the same time, based upon their grade level, based upon their pods that they are in which case we're looking at grade level pods. Once we get through the movements of the building, they'll go to their classes. There will be significantly less students in the class. We have a protocol in place for the disinfecting of the classrooms afterwards. As stated earlier, we're asking for help from our teachers to the rooms. Want to reiterate, I think that the one thing that is going to be the most, especially for myself and Mr. Ingram, the most earth-shatteringly in your face, what we're going through is the way our cafeteria is set up. I don't think I can reiterate that enough. From an educator who's been in this business for a very long time, having spent multiple hours in the cafeteria, watching kids interact, watching them talk to their friends, sitting at different tables, it's going to look different. There's 84 desks all facing the same direction, 6 feet apart, that they can take their masks off and eat. We anticipate at the middle school, and I know the plan, I'll let Mr. Rolls talk about the high school, we anticipate that if they're done eating, we're gonna make every effort to get them outside. We have the availability to use our bus loops, so we hope that that can be something that we can take advantage of once we get them done eating. It's really sad, but it's also something that we know we have to do. I don't think there's any educator that doesn't want to see kids back with us. We want them to come back and be able to spend time with them. One of the other things to be aware of in terms of movement throughout the building, we are going to have a significant amount of people dropping students off in the morning. And so we want to reiterate that the normal drop-off procedure is that you come into the front of the building, drop your student off. If there's a line, if you are the first one in line, we're asking you to move all the way up to the end of the building. We'll have cones designated where you would be able to drop off. And then once they enter the building through the front door, you heard our process for screening, for temperature taking, etc. The second piece to know about entering the building is students coming off the bus. We will have a similar process set up in the backside where students normally come in through the cafeteria, but we will make sure that we are allowing students, we're going to regulate the movement. So in other words, I myself and Mr. Ingram will be out there holding buses until a certain group gets through so that we don't have a bottleneck, as you have seen in multiple posts online. We hope that that will alleviate some of that. And the most important thing I can say from the middle school perspective, we need to see the flow. Once we see what the flow is and how students are moving throughout, we can then make adjustments and adaptations based upon that. The expectation is every student wears a mask. Every student is there. We will also take that into consideration for students like myself who sometimes get to that claustrophobic feeling, a place where we can go away from other people so that we can then give them that opportunity for the social emotional aspect of it. Mr. Rolls.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Thank you for all who are joining us for the second of our third parent forum. I just want to say I've been working exclusively with Mr. Howard to make sure that we have a consistent 6 through 12 plan and message. That's just another way that we can hope to alleviate what we know is already a stressful and anxiety-filled return to school. I know we spent a lot of time already talking about virtual Mondays. Just for our secondary students, that virtual Monday starts at 8:30 in the morning and goes until 12:55 p.m. Student movements throughout the day. So for our upperclassmen, our sophomores, juniors, and seniors who are here on their on-campus hybrid days, we will be running the same 9-period schedule, 40-minute periods, same transition times. So in that aspect, nothing has changed. We have not built that in, but we can.
Yeah, we're looking at that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So we will, we can always look at those transitional times, and we'll go back to something Mr. Auer said too, that depending on the flow, once students are in this building, all those aspects of this plan will be reassessed. And so we will continue to look at those transition times. But we're also gonna, from our staff perspective, be very flexible with staff and students in and around this hallway, because it is very, very different. As Dr. Grubka had said, the hallways have a very solid yellow line separating the hallways into 2 lanes. Arrows have been placed on the floor so that our students and staff know the directions in which they need to be heading in those hallways. The big change for our upperclassmen will be the lockers. Tradition in this building has been grade specific based on floor. So the seniors would be on the first floor, a lot of our juniors would be on the first floor, and then working our way up to the 3rd floor. To help with social distancing, we're going to set up our lockers in banks of 4. And it will be a senior next to a junior, next to a sophomore, next to a freshman, and then the next bank of 4 will be in the same manner, starting down here on the 1st and working all the way up on the 3rd. Now, why is that important? That's because we set up a locker schedule that is grade specific. So our seniors and our sophomores will have periods in which they can go to their lockers. The separation is about 3 feet in between them. And then our juniors and our freshmen will have another period that they can go to the lockers. Because of that, they can carry book bags in and around this building during the school day, and middle school as well. And that's just another way that we're trying to be flexible and working with our students and their families to really mitigate how many times they need to go to their locker throughout the day. So that will be kind of a change of expectation here in the building. Arrival and dismissal. We will only have 2 points of entry and dismissal. That's going to be here at the main lobby for our bussers. And then for those who may be driving or being dropped off, that is going to be the athletic entrance. So those will be the 2 points. Change either the buses we're dropping off at front like they always have. Parents and our drivers who are parking on campus will still be parking and dropping off. Coming down that main entrance here, Darrell Johnson Drive here at the high school, dropping those students off or parking. And so that will be our arrival and dismissal here at the high school setting. Mr. Hill, is there any questions that may be building specific?
Yes. Mr. R, can you talk about tours and orientation for 6th graders?
At this point, tours, the question was once again, talk a little bit about tours and orientation for 6th graders. At this point, we are not going to be doing in-person tours. At this point, we are going to have a 6th grade orientation. As a matter of fact, I talked with our web leaders this morning. Details will be coming out this week, hopefully in a letter that we send out tomorrow. We are going to do that virtually. Our web leaders will be training on Wednesday, and then Thursday of next week will be the virtual training that students will be able to log on to with their web leader. So no virtual orientation will occur. but tours in the building will not occur. I would also refer folks to the 5th grade to 6th grade. I did a virtual tour, I videotaped it, so that is also available. And I believe it was sent out to the 5th graders coming over last year.
There's a question about, are there staggered drop-off and pickup?
No staggered drop-offs. Again, we're asking folks to please make sure that if you are the first person in line dropping off, move all the way to the end of the building. We'll have staff out there to help move that traffic flow along. Students still need to enter through the main entrance if they're being dropped off.
I have a few questions about this. Excellent. I think some of these Dr. Grufford did cover, but there's some clarifying questions. First, will BOCES students go every day? If so, how will they get there on campus in 2 days? I think you did talk about that, Dr. Grufford.
Absolutely. So the question was about students attending BOCES and if it's an everyday attendance expectation and how they would actually go to and from BOCES. So BOCES is running, their BOCES CET program is running a 5-day normal schedule. So they are not operating under a remote nor a hybrid system. So if you are a senior who are attending the morning BOCES schedule or a junior who will be attending the PM afternoon BOCES schedule, you will be following that schedule each day as normal. Transportation, the school will be providing transportation if you cannot drive. BOCES has been very gracious in years past. Students were not able to drive themselves out to BOCES. BOCES has allotted 25 parking spots for Lewiston-Porter students, both in the AM and the PM. So we'll be looking at ways in which that we can assign parking privileges. It could be a lottery system, and I'll be working with Mr. Everett to make sure that those students the 25 allotted spots can drive.
There's a question about attendance. It says if students don't feel well, is it still 10 absences for the year? I'm not sure what that policy is.
So the question was about our attendance policy, and if students who are absent more than so many days, if they would lose course credits, I think is what that question is really pointing towards. And so due to COVID and our response, we have changed some of the expectations, obviously, in regards to attendance. New York State is very clear. Our own health staff and the Niagara County Health Department is very clear. If you do not feel well, please stay home and contact your primary physician. So what used to be, if you miss more than 14 days or 28 days, depending if it was a half-year course or a full-year course, you'd be losing credit here as per our code of conduct, and that is going to be placed on hold during this COVID period.
There's a question for middle school. Will middle school have library or school book borrowing opportunity?
For the start of the school year, all circulation of library books is on hold. We hope that at some point we have a developed program. I'm sorry.
We're looking into a digital.
So the question was, can you talk about library book circulation? And I would just say that at this point, based upon the guidance that's been provided, due to the fact that all library book circulation will be on hold. However, I have met with our faculty who are concerned about students reading. Obviously, we want to keep the education going. They were going to be working on protocols that they might be able to establish in their own classrooms for classroom sets of books going with a student, and for developing a process for when that book is returned, making sure that it's set aside so that other students aren't using it and that we can clean it in that way. But at this point, library circulation is on hold, and we'll reevaluate that as we move forward in the process. Same at the high school.
I have a question coming up from a parent that I don't think I'm understanding. It's saying if you're a senior at BOCES every morning, how will you take your report class?
I think the question may be more about that virtual Monday. I've had a few parents concerned about that. Because we're on a 25-minute block schedule on the virtual Mondays, like Mr. Kasseri and Dr. Lyon have described, our students on our morning senior BOCES would not get back into the building until about 11:10, 11:15. That would be just about in the fifth period. There would be a study hall or a lunch typically for our morning AM BOCES students. And if we're running that block schedule, 25-minute block schedule on Monday, by the time they get home, I have that here, let me just, they would probably be moving into 7th period, which is 11:30 to 11:55, or even 8th period, which starts at noon and runs till 12:25. So if they're missing 1 or 2 periods due to transportation coming back from BOCES, how would then they communicate with their teachers? And that's why we built in that large block of teacher office hours of almost 2 hours, that they could touch base with those individual morning BOCES seniors who may have missed a period due to the transportation from BOCES to home. So we'll make sure that there is contact with those AM BOCES students. Absolutely. Absolutely.
What about senior pictures? How and when will senior pictures take place?
Absolutely. So senior pictures will be taking place in the month of October, which is later than normal, but obviously because of the start of the school year and our COVID reopening plan, that will be at some date not determined yet. So we'll make sure that information is sent out, but it will not be taking place till October at some point.
And then it's three questions about lunch. One, if they don't have a scheduled lunch period, how that's handled. And the other, there's someone saying, is it true students cannot bring their own lunch and have to pay for lunches? And I don't think that that's correct, right?
So the first question, we have quite a few students who actually what we call have full schedules, so they do not have a lunch period built in. In years past, we probably eat inside the classroom as a way of the teacher working with the child because they don't have a lunch period. Because of the social distancing and the sanitizing the classrooms, we're going to have them probably go down to the cafeteria, eat quickly, and then go up to the classroom. So we'll be working with those teachers so that those students who want to eat will have that time to do so and yet still make it back in time to learn the curriculum that they need to. And bringing your own lunch is absolutely okay to do so as normal. Our cafeteria is set up in a way that we have about 120, kind of building what Mr. Howard was talking about. We've got 120 desks spread out 6 feet in all directions, all facing one way. So cafeteria lunch will be in the cafeteria. We're not looking at an overflow room at this point. And so if you buy lunch or if you bring your lunch, you'll be eating lunch down there. When you're done, we do have a space marked off outside so we can get the students out of the cafeteria and enjoy the outdoor weather before they go up to the next period. So what we're kind of planning on now and looking at is actually building in a short window of time at the beginning of the class period. They go down and get their lunch, eat their lunch, and head back up to that class that they're scheduled to be at. So that goes back to the flexibility that we need to have with our students because of our reopening plan and COVID and social distancing. So we'll make sure that those who have a full schedule will have time to eat and yet still receive the instruction that they need. So the question was about freshman orientation. We are not going to have a freshman orientation has happened in years past. We are working on, we've been working with Mr. Hill and Mr. Everett putting together an actually orientation video that students can watch, you know, what it looks like upon entering in the morning, the flow of the building, where certain departments layout is inside this high school. We do have some freshman tours happening on the 24th, the 26th, and 27th. And each one of those 3 days, there are 2 time slots at 9 a.m., at 1 p.m., and due to social distancing, we're only allowing 10 students, and students only, please, to sign up. If you go to the high school website, on the far right-hand side under the announcements column will be the area in which you can sign up, and Mr. Everett has been fantastic putting that together. Some time slots are already full, so I want everyone to be aware of that as well. Yes, in the back. Yeah, what I meant was that our upperclassmen would be used to that. I'm sorry, the question was, previously I spoke about 10th, 11th, 12th graders being on a normal high school schedule with 40-minute periods. What I meant to say, or I was hoping to explain, was that our upperclassmen are used to that schedule, and that's the schedule that we're going to run when you're here. So that includes the freshmen as well. So we're going to start at 7:44. We're going to end at 2:39. we're going to have, 40-minute periods or close to that, depending on the 4 or 6 minute transition times as we continue to finalize our plan. So it will be a normal 9-period day. Yeah, so lockers are not going to be available in between every transition time. With that being said, it goes back to us needing to be flexible with our students because of the change of the hallway and just the one-way directional flow. And that's what Mr. Casari is saying, looking at the 6-minute transitional time instead of a 4, and I got to be honest, we're going to be flexible with students. We're just happy that they're here. And so we're going to make sure that everyone's safe through social distancing, but also kind of walking through these hallways in a manner that's safe for them. And so if they're a few seconds late, we're not going to really worry about that. Yes, ma'am.
If for some reason it is quarantine for today or absent, how in the education process would
Mr. Casari, you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah, that would, they would still continue. So the question was, if a student is quarantined for 14 days, how would the educational process work? If the student is in the hybrid model, then the teacher, obviously they'd be logging on the Mondays, but then the individual teachers are going to have to work with that child in their schedule. It would be no different than if the child was on a long-term absence, so to speak. We're going to have to be, obviously, and there's time built in the teacher's schedules for them to work with students in those situations. But it's going to have to be on a individual basis based on that child's schedule, what's happening at home, how ill they are, those kinds of things. Okay? Correct. The first week is an orientation week, a transition week. Really the first day of school for the whites is Thursday when they get all their stuff and everything like that. More information coming out about that, but the Monday, the reason we chose Monday, some districts, maybe you've heard they chose Wednesday. We chose Monday. We felt it was from a learning standpoint. There, the teacher will have all of their kids together on that first day of the week and then can set the tone for the week and get out assignments. Also, we have quite a number of holidays on Monday, so the Greens would have missed quite a bit of learning had we had the Greens on Monday, Tuesday, rather than Tuesday, Wednesday, about a week's worth of learning. So that's another reason why we chose the Mondays. There are 2 weeks. So first of all, in terms of the school calendar, I just approved the regular hard copy school calendars going out that you hang on your refrigerator, wherever you put it. You'll notice when you go in there, virtually everything, every event, everything has been pulled out of the calendar. We do not, we were looking at those early release days once a month for teacher PD. Those have been eliminated. We are not doing early release days. All superintendent's conference days have been eliminated right up through January. We left them in there for the second semester, and we'll see how that all plays out. But all superintendent's conference days and early release days have been eliminated. The only 2 weeks in this first semester that will be different, you'll be receiving information, those that are coming to us, is Veterans Day week. There will be no virtual Monday. Veterans Day this year falls on a Wednesday, and Veterans Day, always you take it on the day that it falls. It's not one of those Monday holidays. So Greens on that week, it's the week of November the 9th. So on Monday the 9th and Tuesday the 10th, those are green days. Then there's a holiday, and then Thursday the 12th and Friday the 13th. Oh, that's Friday the 13th that day. I feel bad for the whites. No, I'm just kidding. Those will be white days, or the white group day. The other anomaly in the schedule is Thanksgiving week. So Lewiston-Porter has off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for Thanksgiving. So Monday will be a green day and Tuesday will be a white day. And then the students will be off for the Thanksgiving holiday. So those are the only 2 anomalies. Other than, the first week is an orientation week, a transition week. So really the green start on Tuesday, Wednesday. get all of their stuff. There's a lot of distribution, all of those kinds of things. They will get some assignments, some work to do on that Thursday, Friday. Not much. It really starts on Monday. Just some orientation type activities type thing. And then the whites will start on that Thursday. And then the first full remote Monday is really kicks off teachers working very directly with students in the hybrid model. Okay, I know that, and I appreciate the fact Mr. Hill threw a curveball at me and got a lot of the questions out of the way with some very talented people. So I'm very happy about that. So perhaps that will reduce the number of questions.
I have one for Mr. Rolls. It's about art and music appreciation. Still common for grad credit. Is that true?
That is true. That is correct. So art and music appreciation in Apex, those art and music appreciations will count for the art credit. So for instance, if a student is a freshman and is a 100% remoter and they're taking the art appreciation and the music appreciation, that will be counted for the 1 year of art credit. Now, we hope that, at some point they'll be back with us and, retaking all of the upper level art courses. And if they are a musician, rejoining the band or orchestra or chorus, when it is that time for them to return back to us. So we're going to start to answer some questions. We have a microphone, perhaps Dr. Lyon. Do I have any wipes here? Can someone grab me some wipes, John? Just give some to Dr. Lyon so she can move around. If you have any, let's take some questions from the audience.
I saw this again first. And then we'll go him and then you. Yes, for Mr. Auer. Do we know how often are the kids going to get a locker break? Like how, or how long do they have to carry heavy backpacks around? Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
Do we know how often they're going to get a break for a locker break? When they're going to be able to go
Okay.
and get whatever they need from their locker?
Yeah, we're planning at this point of at least 3 based upon their schedule, based upon what grade you're in. We're going to develop that. The question was, do I have to repeat the question now?
I'll ask.
Okay. I'll say it anyway. The question was about lockers and locker breaks and being able to carry book bags throughout. They will be able to carry book bags anywhere they go throughout the building. We also understand very clearly that 6th graders coming in tend to think that they need to take everything with them. So they might take their entire locker and try to carry it around all day. We're going to work with our 6th grade students very closely. We're also going to make sure that they can go to their locker. We just need to make sure that it's not a group all in the hall at the same time. We think 3 at this point. We're going to need to see how it plays out in regards to what grade level, what schedule they're on, etc.
So for the high school, how will band work? What is that going to look like? And then the second question would be, if they do not have a first or last period class, is arrival or dismissal delayed or early?
Students will have the opportunity for early release at any time either if they do not need to be here first period. We would prefer that they not come until their classes start. If they have that availability, obviously they would need to have their own transportation, but they're not going to be dinged on tardiness in any regard for that. If they have a study hall first period, there's really no need for them to be here. So unless they have to come in on the bus, obviously they'd have to go to study hall. We have to put them somewhere. But if they're a driver, we would absolutely encourage them to. It will help in terms of the number of kids coming in the morning, and it would certainly help just managing our study hall. So yes. The other band and chorus and orchestra, they will be available. They're going to be done in small group, small ensembles. Those, the strings can have a closer experience because but woodwinds, brass and singing has to be done 12 feet apart. And so that's going to be very difficult. They'll be done in small group. I just was having a conversation with Mr. Burritt on the way in, what concerts and things like that. Still haven't even worked any of that out yet. But it's going to be small group, look much different. But the students will have it. When they don't have it, because they can't all be in there once, they will either be having a study hall or have an opportunity to work on learning in another part of the building. But they definitely we can't have them all together in the room at the same time.
When will that be finalized, like what that's going to look like?
I know that the music teachers were in today. Dr. Lyon has been working with the music teachers, so they're working on a schedule right now. When will it be finalized? We definitely have to have it finalized by the 8th. We're hoping to have schedules. Really, the biggest issue with getting schedules home is knowing how many 100% remoters we have, because that's going to change the makeup of classes, which is why I have stressed to families that we really need to have that information. Because our hope would be that we would have schedules out the end of next week or the beginning of that last week of summer break before we go. So, obviously at the latest, we would like to have schedules out by September 1, which is that Tuesday prior to the start of school. But we recognize that families are they want to know what their schedule looks like, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you. My question is regarding AP classes and how that's going to be done with the upperclassmen. Especially if everyone's going to be taking AP art, which I know is a very rigorous. They're in there 5 days a week. Are they going to be given supplies to take home? And are the APs actually going to be able to be followed through this year on occasions?
We're required to do so. So the anticipation is that those teachers are currently working. These are Mr. Coppins and I were just having a conversation that, so I'm going to ask Mr. Coppins to step forward and maybe answer that in terms of his thoughts on AP art. Our anticipation is that we will be running it and that we will be covering the curriculum. What people have to understand, so for the hybrid kids, they're basically getting new instruction 120 days. And then they are getting supported work 60 days. Still required to have 180 days of class, but how we're approaching the curriculum. So very often teachers, and this is where we're at with our curriculum. So teachers, they design longer term projects and things that take a long period of time. What we're asking our teachers to do right now, and they're actually working on this, all of our teachers working with us. And I know that our teachers will be utilizing that. Mr. Coppins, I don't know if you wanted to speak to the AP Arts. We had talked a little bit about that. Didn't know you'd be called upon.
I'm ready to go, though, at your service. Mrs. Sanchez, Mrs. Popilski, and myself have met and talked about the fact that we need to prepare our students for this different look of the school year. So we're looking to start the year off in a way in which we are sort of highlighting what the year is going to look like and trying to prepare students for that end goal in mind. It may mean much more independent work this year. There may be more sketchbook assignments that are happening at home on the off days, and then are, you know, reviewed and critiqued on the virtual Mondays, things like that. I teach the three-dimensional portfolio, which is really ceramic and clay based, and that presented a really unique challenge last spring. And but we did it, and we had totes of materials that kids came and picked up once school was closed, and we worked with them remotely. We had one-on-one critiques over Zoom. You know,
we even offered a schedule for some of the really advanced AP kids where they were able to come in one at a time or two at a time and work with Mr. Coppins here. So, you know, we'll be looking to do that as well. Certainly, you know, Mr. Coppins has a full boat of classes that he has to teach on Mondays, but a lot of it, it's just a matter of getting in and working independently in the studio. And so Mr. Coppins, if you've ever been in Mr. Coppins' classes, there's oftentimes students, he's teaching, but there's kids at the wheel and doing things in his room. And that goes for Mrs. Sanchez and Ms. Popielski as well. So I have full confidence that they are going to get them through, but not just get them through, prepare them well, particularly for those advanced art classes like AP. Sure. Any other questions in the audience?
I just had a question. If you do the 100% remote, what about textbooks and different things like that? Supplies?
They're not needed because it's all taken care of in the with the program itself.
If you've already chosen either the hybrid or the stay at home, is there a chance to change that now?
Yes. Please let us know by tomorrow. That would be awfully kind.
Just call the school, or?
Well, you've already filled out the form. Yeah, call the school, would have to pull the form.
If you do that, though, keep in mind, especially if you do that, keep in mind that if you're going from remote into hybrid, you're going to need to let us know about your transportation in the switch.
So there is no common high school today. So if we're gonna, middle school, I'm sorry, middle school. So if you're gonna change.
So the question is, if you're going to change, we would like to know absolutely by Friday. I mean, we are starting to balance classes right now. It's essential that we know. Right. So for those in the middle school, if there's any sort of change that you're making, the middle school currently has no power, no phone. So if you need to call and discuss something about the middle school, call the high school. They can get Mr. Auer, Mr. Ingram. They're working out of here, or call the district office and we can help facilitate that.
With the school supply list, I wasn't sure if everything was still needed. Is a lot of it going to be done online, where there's no paper shuffling or control?
I'll let the principals address that, school supplies.
I can certainly address it from the middle school's perspective. The question was about school supplies. Currently, the school supply lists are online. However, we're reminding parents that this is a different time. And if you can't find all of the things that are necessarily on the list, please realize that we will utilize Google Classroom very much so. And most of the materials that you will need to purchase are going to be much more geared towards the digital component. So I had a parent I spoke with this morning. I couldn't find a certain binder. I couldn't find it. We understand. I'm a parent too. I understand. I can't find the blue binder. We got it. You do the best you can, but understand that those supplies, that supply list is based upon what we normally would do, and with some tweaks, but we also wait till you get to your teacher. They might, if they have something specific, we'll do that. But let yourself off the hook. You don't need to get every single thing if you can't find it. I'll let Mr. Rolls, oh, you're good? And Mr. Rolls says ditto.
Question from the audience. I do have some questions online as well, so I'll take this last question from the audience. We'll come back to you, but let me answer some online as well.
Are the teachers going to be cleaning the desks in between in that 4 minute?
As you heard, we will be increasing the amount of time. I had and I'm sorry that if I caught Mr. Rolls off guard. I know we've been talking about this in middle school, but I had a conversation this morning with CSEA. That's our custodial union. They do need some more time between classes. We have extra cleaners on, so and you have to remember, it's not cleaning that we're doing; it's sanitizing. We're sanitizing. We have these new guns that spray it quick. And so we do feel like between our working with our teaching staff and the extra custodians that we can get everything cleaned and sanitized between classes. Okay, let me take a couple questions.
Anything in red answered already? You get started under teaching and learning.
Okay, how do we find out if our students with an IEP qualify for 4 days weekly? The only students that qualify for 4 days weekly, if they have an IEP, are our students in self-contained classrooms. So if your child is in a 611, a 1211, a 15-1, or is an ENL student, does not speak the language well, or is working on language development, those are the only students that are 4-day-a-week IEP students. So we chose to let our son drive to school. Would he still get on the regular bus on those remote days for BOCES? Yes, unless he is selected as one of the drivers and you're comfortable with him driving to school. But if they're here on campus, the buses will run as normally they do for BOCES. We're hopeful that we'll have 25 seniors driving in the morning and 25 juniors in the afternoon, which would then eliminate our need for extra buses to keep the social distance on the buses. But if he's a driver, perhaps he'll be selected as a driver to BOCES if that's comfortable with the family. How are kids going to receive their work on the 2 days working from home while the teachers are going to have the other group in school? More information on attendance records while home. Yeah, well, 2 ways. Obviously, there's constant transfer of information through Google Classroom, but they're here on Tuesday, Wednesday. Their assignments will be laid out for them when they're not here on Thursday, Friday, and then supplemented through Google Classroom. How will teachers in the district hold students accountable for their assigned work? I think we answered these questions.
Yeah, you got it.
Grades. Grades.
You got that one.
But we know that our students are all intrinsically motivated to do their work at their highest level all the time. So here at Lewiston-Porter, because we are always aiming higher, that will not be an issue.
I think actually you could go down to health and safety.
Okay, what if a student or staff have COVID? Will we be notified? No, not necessarily. We will be working with the Niagara County Health Department on if someone is tested positive, then the Niagara County Health Department kicks in and it's really through the contact tracing that notification takes place. The Niagara County Health Department was quite clear that even the school would not know the individual who tested positive, although, you know, ultimately it wouldn't be too difficult to figure out. But HIPAA and FERPA laws are deeply involved in the scenario with the Niagara County Health Department. Now, there may be, and the Niagara County Health Department has the superintendent's working on 2 letters that we would send home regarding notification if there was a school-wide closure or if the exposure through the contact tracing was such that there was a need to shut down a particular school within a school district. But that would be a very remote scenario. You have to remember, so if everybody is socially distanced and wearing masks, you can be in the presence of someone with COVID and you do not have to be quarantined. There are specific requirements. You go to Wegmans, you go to Tops, you go to Walmart, wherever you go, it's very likely that you are in the presence of people with COVID. but you're never contacted by the Niagara County Health Department in the contact tracing, because you need to be unmasked, not socially distanced, and with that individual for over 10 minutes in order to be considered a need to be tested or quarantined. So, you know, as long as we keep everybody PPE'd up and socially distanced, we should be in a pretty good spot when it comes to contact tracing if we do get a COVID positive case here on campus. If that ends up being a larger exposure, then yes, we do have two notification letters that the Orleans Niagara superintendents are working on that we would get out to our families if needed. But that's all working in conjunction with the Niagara County Health Department, without question. And our school nurses are going to play a key role there as well. What are the procedures for fever, symptoms, positive tests for, I talked a little bit about positive fevers, any symptoms, families need to keep their child home, contact the school nurse, contact their local healthcare provider, and follow the guidelines from their local healthcare provider and the school nurse. It really is dependent on what the symptoms are, how long that they've had the symptoms, and what the local healthcare provider or the urgent care facility is saying in terms of recommending for testing. But without question, students need to remain home until all symptoms are gone, and that there is a note from a doctor, unless there's some mitigating issues and it's an ongoing problem, say with allergies or things like that, that we have some awareness of and the nurses have some awareness of. But absolutely, if symptoms come up here, children are going to be sent home, and they're going to have to remain at home until the symptoms disappear and there's a note at the very least from the healthcare provider. And if the healthcare provider says, you know, I'm just not sure, then the child could not come back unless they're quarantined for 14 days or they have a negative COVID test. If mask breaks are deemed necessary, have you considered taking students outside? Yes, we have, and we will. How do you plan to enforce a zero tolerance policy for students? Students will be sent home and we will be put on 100% remote if they refuse to wear masks. I know there's people in this community that don't believe in them. If you don't believe in the masks, don't send your children to school and go 100% remote. Because if your child comes to school and they're not wearing a mask, they're not going to be, they're going to be taken to the nurse's office, put in the isolation room, and they won't be allowed to return to school unless they wear the mask. So I don't know what else to say about that. If you don't believe in them, I'm sorry, but you know, this is a public institution in New York State, and there are specific guidelines that we need to follow, and we are going to adhere to those guidelines expressly. And if it doesn't work for you, then keep your child home. Question for the Q&A, is there any way to set up for large tents outside? We do have one tent that we will be setting up, and we are going to be encouraging teachers if they choose to teach outside. We have teachers that do that now, but in terms of creating testing, in order for us to have tents, there's specific requirements that have to be specifically okayed by the New York State Department of Education. And we only have one tent that we purchased. So we're looking at the requirements of that and to set that up. But we would be encouraging teachers to take their children outside, students outside, sit under a tree, socially distance and teach. I think it would be awesome if they're able to do that. I know at the elementary level they do that on occasion. Here at the secondary level, I know teachers that do that. And if they are willing to do that and want to do that, we would certainly encourage that. How is PE handled for remote learners? Mr. Helgash, could you help us with that a little bit? Thank you. There's PE in Apex. So the students will be taking, if you're in Apex, you're remote learning, you'll be taking the PE in Apex. But on the off days, Mr. Helgash, maybe talk just a little bit about PE on remote Mondays and then green and white days.
So a hybrid student?
Hybrid students, yes.
So physical education for hybrid students on our remote Mondays, because we're on a 6-day rotation, whatever day that Monday is, let's say for example, it's a day 2, if those students have physical education on day 2, they will attend during their 25-minute block period, day 2, they will attend phys ed online with the phys ed teacher. For those students that did not have phys ed that day, we'll visit the phys ed teachers or turn in assignments or check in some form with their phys ed teachers during the office hours, which will be the 2 o'clock to 3:10 time frame. Those students at every grade level will be given a specific time of office hours so that the teachers are not inundated across each of the buildings. For example, we don't want 9 through 12 students all at once trying to check in with the phys ed staff. So they're going to break them down so it's more manageable and that they could address students' questions or concerns on that Monday. On the Tuesday, Wednesday, if you're a green student, one of those days each week, you will physically see your physical education teacher and attend phys ed class for 40 minutes. At all costs, we are trying to get outside. We will try to get outside at as much as we possibly can, even if the weather's not that great, due to the fact that it will be a nice, a welcome mask break for our kids, and it will allow them to get some physical activity. Whereas if we're indoors, the physical activity or aerobic activity becomes very difficult. Same thing goes on the Thursday, Friday for the greens, or for the white students. They will see their phys ed teachers one time during those 2 days. On a Wednesday and Friday, the students will also check in virtually. So on a Wednesday, the white students would check in with their phys ed teacher during selected office hours to either turn in assignments, check in with their phys ed teachers, and then on a Friday, the green students would check in virtually with their phys ed teachers to, again, turn in assignments that have been given over the 3 days that they're not in school. Out of those, the 4 days hybrid portion.
Are they changing clothes for these? Like if you're taking them outside in bad weather?
No. The locker rooms are going to be closed. At the high school level, we have bathrooms by our concession stand out in the hallway near the main gymnasium. Those are going to be the lavatories that the students are allowed to use. We're not opening the locker rooms at all. Same thing with the middle school. The middle school's bathrooms are actually in their locker rooms, so they're only using the locker rooms to go use the bathroom. There will be specific procedures that the teachers will give the students so as we don't congregate around those areas, and we make sure we use the bathrooms in a timely manner. But there will be no changing whatsoever. There will be, as of right now, we are going to start off the year with no equipment use, so there'll be no sharing. There'll be no activities where there's purposeful touching or tagging. All the activities we do will be individual, and the distancing would be 12 feet individually in every direction if our resting heart rate or aerobic activity increases.
But they will be encouraging them to dress for the weather. So
Yeah.
on days that are, as we get into the fall, chillier, wear a fleece, wear a shell. If it looks like it's going to be a little bit wet that day, obviously if it's a torrential downpour, no, but
Right.
if it's a misty day, or obviously dress for that, but we're going to try to get them outside.
Yeah.
Well, they could certainly put a shell or a hat or gloves and. Correct.
So The question is there, the students with the, that bring personal backpacks, their Chromebooks, and their personal items to phys ed, and they're going outside, they don't necessarily want to carry all that stuff around. We will have, at the high school, we will have the bleachers out, and the bleachers will be designated specific spots. On the bleachers, there's marked pieces of tape where everyone is, if we had to stay inside and have to sit in the bleachers, we would have them sitting in marked areas 6 feet apart, socially distanced. So if they come to a phys ed class, they would leave their bags on one of those marked spots in the bleachers.
The gym will be locked.
Yeah, and supervised. The gym will be supervised as well. Oh, yeah. Yep. Right.
So the gym will be locked and it will be supervised.
Yeah. For the middle school, the students would leave their stuff in the gymnasium. My thought is the teachers, and we haven't planned this out 100% because they haven't been in yet to start their 10 hours of professional development and creating their lessons. But my thought is they will be marking the floors with tape to ensure that we're keeping a 6-foot distance. So my thought would be is if they do bring their stuff, which middle school students don't tend to bring a lot of stuff, but with this circumstance they might, they'll just leave their specific items on the floor on a spot.
Great, thank you. And again, for our 100% remoters, they will be taking PE through the Apex online learning program. We're done with our questions? Okay. Any more questions from our audience?
I have a couple questions actually. As far as the musicals, the kids that were in drama club, is that something that gets
That's not going to happen. No, that's not going to happen.
Okay. And you had mentioned earlier about the filtration, the MERV.
Yeah.
Is that something that gets changed that you change like the filtration?
Yeah, I mentioned that. Yes, we've upgraded all of them to meet the MERV requirements. Yes.
Okay.
Sure. Sorry, I if that didn't come across, that's what I intended to say.
Just to clarify, consultant teachers will be in the rooms on full day?
Correct. And on the off days, study skill classes will, so there'll be, for PE students that are home, there's going to still be at least one remote study skills. Some of the teachers are talking about possibly using webcam for study skills, where they could webcam into the study skills class. We want to encourage teachers to do that, but whether it's either virtual through Zoom or webcam, there's going to be study skill classes, which are normally 5 days a week. That will happen every day, virtually.
One more. I know it's probably too early to tell, but I have a senior this year. Is it going to be something that, they're going to be like missing out on their senior activities?
Yeah, at least the first part. I mean, there's going to be no homecoming. There's going to be no homecoming dance. There's going to be obviously none of that. Mrs. Townsend and Mrs. Deanna are the senior class advisors. They want to get going on fundraising to, obviously we'll be doing graduation. Activities will take place in the spring, much similar to what we did this past June with the seniors. Graduation will probably, if we're still in this, which I don't know if we see an end in sight, but at this point, we would probably have graduation similar to as we did, breaking it down into groups of 3, socially distanced, those kinds of things. But we'll have to see what the requirements are. But, in terms of senior class trip and those, no, that's not all happening, for sure.
I'm sorry, I'm just not quite clear yet on the procedure, I guess, for gym days. So kids go to the gym and leave their belongings there?
That's correct.
They're taken outside?
That's correct.
And so if it's in the beginning of school, it's usually hot. So it's a hot day, but they're not allowed to change or?
That's correct. They need to dress appropriately. They're gonna have to dress appropriately for the weather. So wear shorts, wear a tank top, wear loose fitting clothing, because they're gonna get hot outside. They will, yes, they will. Yeah. That's why they would, if they're outside during obviously they're not gonna go out in a torrential downpour, but if oftentimes it's misty here or light rain. If you see that's happening in the morning, wear a shell, wear some sort of a pullover shell, a jacket, put a jacket in your book bag, put a baseball cap in your book bag. Prepare like you're going to go outside, but if you wear a hat and a shell or a light jacket in a light rain, then you come in, you can take it off, and off you go. What's that? But you can go to your locker at least 3 times a day at the middle school, and there'll be offered opportunities at the high school as well. So then you would take it out of your book bag, you could hang it up in there, all of those things. Parents are going to have to work with us on that for sure. But either that or there really is no other option for us with PE. Go ahead, Mr. Helgash.
Yes, this is Mr. Helgash. Another thing that also to keep in mind, for phys ed classes outside, we have several areas that are dry areas.
Yeah, undercover.
So turf, the tennis courts, the sidewalks. So the phys ed teachers on really wet days, it may not be raining, but it may be very dewy in the grass. We will try to make every attempt to stay on those hard surfaces, the turf, the courts, and stuff like that. So
I mean,
it does not become a problem.
PE, people have to understand, PE is going to be really limited. It's going to be a lot of walking. It's going to be a lot of calisthenics, light jogging. It's going to be these types of activities. It's not going to be PE like you think of it. It's just not. There's going to be no equipment to start the school year, so no games. It's going to be a very, very limited PE experience. I wish it could be more than that. And I obviously wish we could use our gymnasiums and our beautiful fitness rooms. We may get to that. We know that the governor has opened up gyms. That doesn't, oftentimes people say, well, he opened up gyms. Well, doesn't that count for the school? Well, they played baseball all summer, but you'll notice that we still don't have interscholastic athletics. So the rules that schools have to live by are often different than maybe the rules of the general public, a little bit more strict. But who knows? I don't know where that's going to go in terms of the PE piece. But yeah, I can't stress enough, we can't have kids in the locker room, they can't be changing. So PE is going to be very limited, and there'll be a report going out every day, reminding families of the weather tomorrow for PE and dress appropriately for PE and those kinds of things, and that'll be coming out from the PE office for sure. Question?
We have an announcement from our.
Oh, Sue, what do you have?
We want to remind us to bring a clean pair of socks just in case we need it. And.
Change your underwear every day. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Sue Lombardi. I'm the middle school nurse, and I just wanted to speak on behalf of all the nurses here. We're all doing our very best to keep our kids safe as possible. There's a few things I do want you to remind you. As a nurse, we could not diagnose anything. That's why when we get a child with symptoms, we cannot diagnose them and say you have allergies or you don't have allergies, you have something else. That's why we have to have you take them to the doctor. I also want to remind you that as far as whether you're remote or whether you're hybrid, the physical immunizations and the requirements for physicals and immunization requirements are still the same. New York State did not change that. So you can, physicals are required for pre-K, K, and then 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. The immunization requirements are finally up for 2021. I have sent that to Mr. Hill, and hopefully with his tech wisdom, he can put them on our website so you can view them there. You can also ask your physician for their guidance as well. Screenings will not be done this year. The hearing, vision, and scoliosis screenings will not be done, and that is for New York State. I also ask that since masks are going to be required, and they will be required to go into the nurse's office as well, please kind of prep your kids, getting them used to wearing them, maybe a couple hours and then take a break, couple hours, take a break, just so that they're used to it before they come to school. I'm not sure how many of you have really, masked them up and taken them out. Maybe you haven't taken them out often enough where they needed to wear them, but just get them used to it. And also, just so you know, we will be giving in every school, the nurses will be making sure the kids have some hand washing instructions, and also just reasoning on why you wear a mask and how to properly wear a mask. Because I see when I go out in public, a lot of people wearing them below the nose and underneath the chin, and it's not doing a bit of good because they have to be covered from the top of the nose to under the chin. So we'll be giving them instructions, depending on, obviously how well they can get the information, because PEC will obviously be different than the instructions we'd be giving to the middle school and high school students. So, and if you have any questions for the nurses, please feel free to email us, and we'll do our best to get back to you as soon as we can. And being at the middle school, I can't get back to you right now very well, but hopefully when we get the electricity back, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
It will, Sue, I promise. Yeah, I drive around a lot, and I see lots of kids gathered in groups here in our community not wearing masks. That's choices people make, but if they're accustomed to that over the summer, they're going to need to get accustomed to a new way of going about it should they come back to school. Because here at school, and I know many have jobs, if they work at Wegmans or they are probably wearing their masks or they work at Tops, they're wearing the mask all the time. But some kids maybe aren't as accustomed. We are certainly worried about it at the elementary level, but at the secondary level, it's just not going to be something that we're going to have any leeway on. They have to wear the mask unless those designated times that they're allowed not to. And so I hope that families will recognize that and buy into that, and students will recognize that and buy into that. All of those things. But obviously, case by case, one student at a time, we'll make sure that we address it. Are there any other questions from the audience? Because we've answered all the questions online. So just let me say thank you very much for coming. And I can't honestly say to you where this is all going. I know so many of the questions that came today about, well, what's it going to look like? Honestly, I take this one day at a time. It changes so rapidly. There's so much change. There's so much fluidity. The rules change all the time. I don't try to look too much into the future. I would not have in my wildest dreams envisioned that we would be here in this situation. It's just something that has never been on my radar, but we are, and we are trying to confront it with a great team, strong knowledge base, and trying to put all our skills together. But I hope the community recognizes that we've never done this before. This is as new for me as it is for everybody else. And the answers that I give you are what I know based on what I read and where I'm at. But trying to envision it into the future, I feel like I've said to many, I wish we could get started tomorrow, because once we get started, then we can make the adjustments needed and the change, because we'll figure things out as we go along, and some things might open up. Some things might change depending on how it all plays out, but we don't know that until we get it started. So I'm excited to get it started. I'm frightened, apprehensive, because it's so new, and obviously the health and safety and welfare of 2,000 kids and 20,000 members of our community and our staff. That's something that I bear for sure, but it's okay. Because I feel like I've got a great team and we're in it together, and I've got a great Board of Education that represents all of you that has been so wonderful and communicative. maybe you've heard me say this story. I'll just, it's kind of like where I end it. So my grandmother, who I was very close with, she was born in 1903. She's gone now, but she lived through the pandemic. She was 15 years old in 1918. And, you know, there was no vaccine, and over 50 million people worldwide died. She lived in Brooklyn at the time. She'd just come over from Italy, and was living in Brooklyn. And, you know, they lived in a very difficult tenement type situation. And they made it through, you know, and by 1920, it was over. So the point I try to make to you is we're going to get through this. It will end at some point. Those folks thought it would never end. And she said it was tough. And, you know, back in those days, there was no cell phones and no communication. And, you know, some people wore masks, some people didn't wear masks. Woodrow Wilson at the time was fighting World War I and was actually avoiding it, didn't want to talk about it because he was so focused on the war effort. And there was a lot of politics going on then as well, in 1918. So it's so interesting how it mirrors what's happening now. But the point I make is we will get through this, but we have to get through it together. And, you know, this is not going to be perfect. What we have created is not going to make everybody happy. People are not going to be happy with everything. But, you know, we can't always be happy with everything. We have to look at the greatest good for the greatest number and try to move that idea forward, settling on a plan that is going to be positive and reinforcing for as many as we can. So that's where we're at with it. I hope you'll recognize that. Appreciate all the feedback from the community. Continue to keep it coming. I'm welcome to it. I'm open to it, and we'll get through this together. Thank you all, and please, if you can, make your decisions if you haven't already by tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Thank you.